Welcome. I'm Pete McGilvery. I'm one of the environmental administrators at the Office of Environmental Management and Central Office FDOT. I've been with the department as both a consultant for the first 7 years and also as a state employee. Together, I have about 23 years in our agency. Today, we're going to do a part one of a two-part webinar series intended to provide clarity and guidance on the Alternative Corridor Evaluation, or ACE, process. Today's session will be an overview of the ACE process and how it interfaces with other FDOT processes. And then part two, which we're going to give in a week from now, we'll be delving into more of the details in the development of the products and the coordination and the reviews and approvals, as well as providing some examples and some better practices along the way. These webinars were developed in direct response to district requests for additional guidance on this process. Here in the request, we had our team collect ACE documentation from around the state, review the materials, interview the districts, and even interview our state and federal partners regarding the products that we were producing in support of this process. The outcome was always to pull together all these resources into a recorded webinar series so that we could give you some guidance and a resource to encounter and go through the ACE process. So before I get on a couple things, I did want to mention a couple other things about what we're going to do today. One, we were lucky. We are getting some PDH credits for those that are attending this webinar. We may also be getting some AICP credits, but we're not sure. When we communicate with you later through email, we will make that information available to how to get those credits should they be available. Another thing that you're going to hear throughout is we're recording this thing. We want to make it as a resource available to you guys. Once it's available, we'll send out an email with the links. Any of the materials that we go through today and in the webinar next week, we'll have a web page where the recordings will be available, as well as all the supporting documentation as well. So let's just talk about introducing the team. Let's go ahead and put it on the next slide for me. Obviously, I'm Pete McGilvery at the very top there, and then we'll shift to some other folks. But I did want to tell you that we also have Katasha Cornwell, as well as Tu Clark. There are other environmental administrators with OEM and central office. They are attending, and they are available on the webinar. And if questions come in, we need to pull them in, you may hear from them as well. That said, I do want to introduce the rest of the team that are going to be providing the webinars over the next couple of weeks. You see them up on the screen. The first one is Sylvia Beltre. Sylvia is Santec's Vice President and Practice Lead for Transportation Planning and PD&E for the state of Florida. Throughout her career, Sylvia has completed a variety of projects ranging from complex ACE projects and feasibility studies to expressways, interchange improvements, highway widenings, PD&E studies all around. Sylvia has played an instrumental role in also assisting the department in getting and implementing and applying and receiving the NEPA assignment program, as well as supporting other statewide initiatives. Then we have Ted Denvers. Ted is a retired DOT manager with 36 years of highways, aviation, and construction projects. For the last 5 years, he's been with Santec, and he's helped OEM to develop numerous procedural initiatives, including the SWOT process, research on planning and environmental linkages, which you'll hear about today, scheduling templates for PD&E, and a variety of computer-based training modules. And then we also have Chris Benitez. Chris is a Santec project manager with 14 years of experience with planning and design of transportation infrastructure projects. He's been assisting OEM with various initiatives over the last 5 years, including the SWOT process, computer-based trainings, Pell again, and scheduling templates for PD&E studies. So I just want to thank my presenters, and I'm going to hand it over to Sylvia as we get started today. To you, Sylvia.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Pete, and good afternoon and welcome everyone to the ACE process webinar. As Pete mentioned, I'm Sylvia Beltre with Santec, and I'm going to get us going. The webinar, as Pete mentioned as well, is being recorded and will be posted on the website later. And that will allow others who could not attend but wanted to convenience to attend at their leisure. A series of handouts have been developed to accompany each webinar. You can download them now or later when the webinar is posted on the website, but you do not need them to follow along for this particular webinar. if you are watching the webinar with others, please go ahead and enter the names on the question box of everyone attending, and that way we'll make sure they get proper credit, whether that's for PE or AICP credits, if we're lucky to get those. During the webinar, if you have a question, please feel free to post them in the question box. Our team will be monitoring those questions as they come in and address them after each lesson. So moving on, this is webinar 1 of a 2-part webinar series. In this webinar, we will provide an overview of the ACE process and establish the framework of ACE, the history of ACE, why it's done, when it's done, and what types of projects may benefit from ACE. So Ted Devens will take us through an overview of the planning phase in lesson 1, and then Chris Benitez and I will collaborate on lesson 2 to provide an overview of the ACE process. And then finally, at the end, I'll come back to close out with a short lesson 3 to discuss scoping considerations. Webinar 2, as Pete mentioned, will be held next week and delves deeper into the ACE process. We will be highlighting lessons learned and best practices along the way. Next slide. The ACE process is described in ETDM manuals, chapters 3 and 4, as well as the PD&E manual, part 1, chapter 4. The webinar assumes that participants have a basic understanding of the ETDM process, the environmental screening tool, and the project development process. The recommended training highlighted here on this slide provides context to the ACE process.